Hello, I'm your host, David Newson, and welcome to Coded in Gold. This podcast explores the fractured, beautiful pieces of our modern life through compelling stories and conversations with exceptional individuals. Let's get started. Welcome. In this episode, I sit down with Tony Martignetti. Tony's journey took him from a creative childhood in Boston through a seemingly successful career in biotech and an intense moment of reflection and ultimately into the work he does today as an executive coach and author. What drew me to this conversation was his willingness to speak honestly about the tension so many people feel between creativity and corporate life, and the courage it takes to live more fully expressed. As you'll hear, we talk about authenticity, self-reflection, and what it really means to integrate all parts of yourself into your work and leadership. Tony also shares insights from his book, Illuminating Hidden Brilliance, which invites us to stop compartmentalizing who we are and start leading from a more genuine place. Let's get into it. Here's Tony. Oh gosh, I love origin stories.
Yes.
Where did you grow up? What was it like? Like all of that kind of stuff. So why don't you just kind of kick us off there?
Sure thing. Well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. This is just
oh my goodness. That part's easy.
Yeah. I just love the way, that you're conducting the interview and, your energy is awesome. So let me start with my origin story of sorts. Where did I come from? I grew up in Boston, in the suburbs of Boston, and I was, as a child, someone who thought about, how do you create worlds that evoke an emotion? How do you create an experience of, what does it mean to walk into a room and feel something? I know this is a weird thing for a child to actually think about, but as you can imagine, as I'll share more about what I'm up to these days, that was a prelude to what I was going to get up to. So people who saw my work, the teachers and people who saw my artwork, they were like, what are you doing? This is interesting what you're doing. And then I just said, hey, this is, what I'm called to do, is to create environments and worlds. And
okay, so from what age? What age are we talking about? I'm asking out of curiosity now. My husband and I have a 7-year-old son who is very, very creative. And I'm curious about what that learning environment was. Were you a public school kid? Were you are we talking Montessori stuff? How were you able to, obviously you were able to thrive, but what was your incubator like?
It's a great question. So first of all, I grew up in an immigrant family. My dad's from Italy. My mother was from Lebanon, and so there was a hard work mentality. And so at a very young age, I was kind of thrown into the world of work, just working with my dad, helping to build buildings and do all types of fun projects. But for me, my world of retreat was art, and I went to a public school.
Okay.
Some really good, we had a great program for art, so that was wonderful to have. But that's really what got me into it. It was just something that I enjoyed doing. And I wouldn't say that I was a quiet kid per se. I was outgoing, but I wasn't the sports type.
Gotcha.
So art was my vehicle. And at the ages of, like you said, 7, it was around 7, 8, 10, those years were the early years where I first had that bug of this is what I do. This is how I, express myself. And then it progressed all the way up into high school. I was in advanced placement art. There was a thought that I was going to go to be an architect. Until there was the expectation of, okay, what are you going to do what are you going to study in school? And the guidance counselors and people around me said, maybe you should think about a path that's going to be a little more lucrative. And so I decided to become a pre-med major.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Oh my goodness. See, okay, let's call a timeout right there, right? There are some really important roles in children's lives that can really, really push you in certain directions. Anyway,
Yeah.
We should be, what I'm saying is adults should be very, very careful how they push kids.
Well, yeah, and I think let's think back. This is I'm 50 years old, and I'm no spring chicken, but I'm not. But of course, 50 years
Same.
old is kind of young nowadays in the spectrum of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
But back then, there was an inclination that we needed to think, okay, how does one, support their family, and what is
That's
the
right.
livelihood that's going to be available to us? So I just followed the best laid path, and that was what was available to me.
Okay, so pre-med.
Yeah, pre-med was on the table, and that's what I went after. And I was a smart guy, so I took to it like a moth to a flame, and worked towards it, and used a different part of my brain. But I did realize very quickly after the first 2 years of being in that program that this was not the thing that was going to bring me to life. So
How did you know that?
well, I struggled with chemistry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I also started to have this inclination, even though radiology was the thing that was in my mind that I wanted to be a radiologist.
Okay.
Because I love the study of the body and the, kind of like looking at the bone structure and all that. I just realized that there was a lot of things between the end goal and where I was that was going to be a struggle. For example, cutting people open.
Okay.
So what did I do? As I pivoted, I went to a really good school. I was at Northeastern University, and they had so many great programs. I decided to pivot into the business side of things. And I said to myself, hey, maybe I'll do the business of, life sciences or biotech. And that's, what might end up being the way that I can still be in science, but also play a different role. So that's what happened. I ended up getting into business, but in the biotech business, and spent 25 years in that industry, which was a wonderful journey with some of the most groundbreaking organizations in the space. So,
Wow, very cool.
yeah.
Before we exit kind of early childhood and move on,
Yes.
was there someone in your early life, parent, teacher, mentor who influenced like how you think about meaning, or even leadership?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I love this. I talked briefly about my dad and my mom.
Right.
They've both passed, unfortunately, but they left an imprint on me about this idea of working hard, and nothing is guaranteed, besides the fact that what you can do with your hands, and your own ability. And so at a very young age, that was imprinted on me, this hard work mentality, the immigrant mentality of come to this country and make a name for yourself through hard work. My dad built a building, and built a company for himself, and one that he actually sold and made an early retirement. He retired at 50, which is really amazing.
Wow, that is amazing.
So all things considered, he left a blueprint of what success could look like. However, we all know that hard work isn't only thing that you want to be doing. You also want to be working smarter, and I think I over-indexed on the hard work. So
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
How so? Bring that to life a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I worked so hard at something that I probably wasn't wired for, which is the analytical side of the house. And so I went on the finance track and was a person who is known for, building models and doing all types of analytical things. But as you can imagine, somebody who's creative and has that, the sense of seeing people and being a people person, a connector, as people would always say to me, there was working hard at being something that I really wasn't, but feeling like I should be. And so I tried to fit into the box of this person who was the CFO type, the strategist. And I played a good one on TV, but in reality, deep down, I just felt like I was disconnected from that person.
When did the seams of that box start to fray for you, and how did you know?
Yeah.
I know, like, of course, like we all know as human beings, like, okay, this might not be right for me, but for someone to actually, chart a course and a departure from that box,
Yeah.
there's usually signs and things. Like, how did
Yeah.
that happen?
I mean, it was about 5 or 6 years before I left the corporate world. And so that's a long time to be sitting and thinking like, well, something's not right here. I mean, I was starting to feel this sense of depression and overworking, trying so hard to put on the show, but not knowing what to do besides working harder. Yeah.
Wow.
And so the late nights of, trying to push myself and saying like, I can work just as hard as anyone else. And by being that person, I will outwork the average person.
Burnout,
Yes.
you know, corporate citizenship.
Hmm.
These are things that go together. Having, those early indicators, like, yeah, getting depressed about work and like working harder. And well, those of us who know this well, working harder is not a recipe to end those states,
Yeah.
right? It's a recipe to exacerbate like what's actually happening.
Hmm.
But talk about that a little bit more,
Sure.
because I can imagine, some listeners, even good corporate citizens, folks that fit that mold, right? I know here in our community circle,
Hmm.
there's a lot of, corporate workers as well. And when we're passing them, whether it's at drop off or pickup or various other events, sometimes you can kind of see it on their face. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
things things must be tough over there.
Yeah. And things aren't right.
Things aren't right. Like, yeah, you're that little alarm light, inside is going off, and other people can sometimes see it, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we try to put on a good face, and especially with social media, there's an element of always trying to look like everything's right.
Oh
But you
gosh,
know
that's
that,
LinkedIn right now for me. I get
hmm,
on LinkedIn and I'm like, how can everyone be so amazing and so successful and so freaking perfect? It's like, ugh,
yeah, it's not the case. And
it's a
I always
mirage.
say
Yeah.
nothing's is as it seems,
Mm.
and no one's out there, ready to save us. We have to look for ourselves to be the savior, and what that means is we have to shift our own mindset through the process of saying, okay, how do I step back and get some perspective on where I'm headed? So we'll talk more about that in a moment. But I mean, I'll just start by saying that the first thing that I had to do is stop getting into the cycle of, first of all, seeing that working harder was going to be the savior, and that, the next thing that I started to see was resentment for other people. Because instead of
Oh,
me looking at myself as the problem, I started to resent other people for having, like, why are they having such an easy path? Well, the reality is they
sure.
don't have
Oh
an
yeah.
easy path. I'm just
Yeah.
making it harder for myself than I needed to be.
Like, I hate to admit this. Like, my ego's like, oh no, don't do it. Um, I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been there.
And so many people have. And I think ultimately we need to break the pattern. And I say that all the time. What pattern do you need to break? And the even more challenging question, and I use this in my coaching practice all the time, is like, what are you tolerating that you shouldn't?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Yeah. Because whether that's something that you're tolerating about yourself, or it's something on your team that you're tolerating that you shouldn't. Because
Give
sometimes,
me an example of
yeah,
some of the things that you hear from some of your coaching clients.
oh,
Like,
absolutely.
what are they tolerating that they shouldn't?
Yeah, poor behavior on the team. For
Oh,
example, people using passive aggressive behavior with others on the team, and
yep.
with that, not saying something to that person allows other people to say this is acceptable. So therefore, this is something I can do as well. People
Wow.
showing up late to work and then leaving early. And, not to say that, it's about how much time you are at work, but it's about saying that there's a sense of laziness that we can put into the work without bringing that to the surface and saying this is not okay. This is not okay to phone it in. We want to make sure that you're committed to the work. and that,
Yeah.
we have like a norm for the team.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that that's the example that you used because in a world where everything is memeified, right? You only have to go so far as like your Instagram feed to like, oh my gosh, like, and you have your own personal version of what's going to stoke your fear, stoke your, yeah, just kind of stoke all of the emotions. There is nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong with high standards on a team.
Yeah.
Like, I'm an entrepreneur now, and I have incredibly high standards. What's also interesting is I was having a conversation with my team the other day, and which made me feel really good. And they said, you know what? This place is an awesome place to work. Standards are high, but at the same time, we have the freedom and the ability to work when we want to work because we have a distributed team across time zones, right? So we've got some folks on the East Coast, me, like, I'm on the West Coast. If I'm coming in at 8 a.m., it's already 11 o'clock Eastern. And a lot of the team is East Coast, which is also an interesting dynamic. So by the time like I roll in at 8 a.m., they've had time for their day to start and breathe. And I also have told them like, hey, I don't care when you actually do your work, but I do care about standards being high, quality being high, because we're in a service business.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is. And that's like all of our reputations are at stake. But I love that where it's just like, hey, there's no problem with having high standards. In a world where it seems like some memes are like, oh yeah, just relax, let it like just everything is going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just love what you just shared is perfect because exactly what you did was you set expectations. I think what happens oftentimes, and this is where there's a lot of miscommunication, is when people don't know what to do or how to show up or how to be in the workplace. And so that they kind of like fill in the gap of communication by just doing whatever they feel is appropriate. And then they call out.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think that, one of the things that you can say is like that we have a workplace. This is our environment. This is what it's like here. And if people don't like it, that's okay. That's not
Right.
It's not saying, you're a bad person. It just says that this is the way that we are operating here. And we've been clear about the expectations.
Is it fair to say that what drew you originally into finance strategy and life sciences was a guidance counselor push to what the market would provide you, a decent living?
Yeah, I mean, there are other elements to it too. I mean, let's be honest.
Okay, what else? What else?
There's, the altruism of, saving lives and helping people to live better lives through health. And science, I've always been attracted to science. I mean, I grew up in the Star Wars era. So, I mean, let's be honest, Star Wars was interesting and, you wanted to be able to
still love it.
Yeah, of course. So I think there was an element of science always had a role in my life, but I don't necessarily know if it was my calling to actually be the person who does the application of science. It's more of a fascination than a
quick note on Star Wars. Like, I loved Star Wars so much, and then I'm so glad that it's been so durable through the ages because even a few years ago, so my son loves Legos and a little bit of a Lego prodigy at a very young age. We got the adult set for around the holidays. Actually, it was a Santa thing. And it was the adult version of the AT-AT walker.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And I don't know who wanted it more, him or me. But we worked on that project together, and that's where I was like in awe. I was like, holy crap, how old was he at the time? I think he was 5. My 5-year-old son is putting together this whole thing and loving it, right? And I was just kind of co-piloting, like, okay, let me organize some pieces for you and get them on deck because you're moving fast, right? So I'm like, okay, I'll help with this other stuff. And he was just like, boom, boom, boom. He just knew exactly, almost intuitively what to do. And then it was and for me, I was like, oh yeah, let's do the equivalent of framing that thing because it was so big. Like, let's put it on a shelf in the living room or something, right? And the next day after building it, he was like, no, I want to take it apart. And I'm like,
It's like the movie where like, Will Ferrell like glues the pieces together.
Oh yeah, yeah, totally. Totally. I was like, no, don't do it. It's a work of art. Please don't do it. But that was his process. He loves to construct. He loves to deconstruct. And then those pieces now sit in these massive bins in his playroom where he's then able to reconstruct completely new things, which I'll give you an example. Okay. He makes me things all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He says, look, Dad, this is me and my wife when we get married.
That is awesome. I say we gotta keep on fostering that creativity there. That's wonderful.
How did you define success for yourself in the early days, like in corporate life? What did success look like, or what was your scorecard for yourself?
Yeah, I love that you bring up this particular term, because when I think about my first book, it's called Climbing the Right Mountain. It's all about redefining success for myself and for others. But at that point, I think my definition of success was so out of whack. For me, it was continuing to push for the next level, and having the title, and title was everything.
Right.
And, the external elements of success were everything I lived for, to the point where I wasn't even living a life that I wanted. I was just living an external life, not an internal life. And what that meant is that I spent less time with my friends, less time with my family. I remember moments being on vacation, doing deals, business development deals. And, my family was out on the beach, enjoying themselves in Martha's Vineyard. And I was sitting there trying to get the final, deal done for a business development deal.
Oh, wow.
In those moments, you don't get back. And this is the thing that I always remember. This one thing when my dad was sick, he had an aneurysm, and he was he came out of a coma, and he told me, he's like, cherish the moments when your kids are young. At this point, my son was a bit older than he had known because he was out of it. But he said, these moments go by in a flash. And I'm like, wise words from a person who at this point didn't know his name. It's just, I get a little emotional when I say that, because I just think about how I had wasted so many of those days. Yeah. Worrying about the wrong thing.
I think a lot of us can relate to that.
Yeah.
As intentional a life as I attempt to lead myself these days, being an entrepreneur, having the flexibility of being able to work when I want and those types of things, there's also this lovely little thing for me that is an addiction to work.
Yes.
I love what I do. Absolutely love what I do. I love working on behalf of my clients, and I still make poor decisions when it comes to should I work, or should I be spending time or attending the event or doing more pickups and drop-offs at school. And I've even noticed recently, and some of this is good, some of this is not great, but my husband has taken over a lot of the pickup drop-off stuff with school. And it's created distance between me and other families, because like that's kind of this social connection to the community of like, parents and school and the kids and all that kind of stuff. And if I keep going the way I'm going, the gap will increase. And so I have to be very intentional about closing that gap. So I'm really glad that you shared that, because there's something that's been tickling my brain lately that's like, hey, have a conversation with my husband, start taking at least a day, just start with a day a week for a pickup or a drop off. Because those moments with our son, like those are the moments where he wants to talk to you, right? Like he's like, or putting him into bed at night, right? Like, those moments.
Yeah, once they're teenagers, they become a little less interested in you. So, yeah.
What was that?
I said once they're teenagers, they become a little less interested in you.
Well, yeah, totally. And a lot of folks have told me like, hey, that age keeps getting younger and younger, it seems.
Yeah. Well, I love that you shared this. One of the things you said that really is something. Literally, I've put those words right out of my mouth, and I've actually written an article about it. Addicted to doing was something
Ooh.
that I literally said so many times. I forgot to be, and I was so addicted to keep on going to the point where I forgot what it's like to not be doing. It just became like the default setting of who I was. And so we kind of externalize it and say like it's someone else's fault, or we have to get someone else to help me, get out of this spiral. But the reality is it's back on you, and not to be kind of like self-deprecating or, to be beating yourself up. But the person who has to shift that is you setting the boundaries and saying, no, I need to create that space. If this is important, I have to create the structure to make that happen.
Did you have a lightning bolt moment?
I sure did. I sure did. I had 2 of them, and I call them flashpoints because.
Okay, cool. I like that.
Flashpoints because I'm all about the branding nowadays. I got my yeah.
You're talking to a marketer, so I love it.
There you go, right? So I got the podcast, the virtual campfire, and in there I usually take people through what's called a flashpoint, a moment in their journey that have ignited their gifts into the world. And for me, those flashpoints are the moments that really changed how I looked at the world. Number one was being at the darkest point in my life, which was not knowing if I wanted to go on with my life. And so in the darkest points of my days was realizing that I didn't recognize my life any longer. And even though I was outwardly successful, not many people knew that I was struggling internally. And I thought, well, what's the point of life? And so I had contemplated those, whether or not I wanted to continue. But I held on to one thing. What will this message that I'll send to my son if I did this? And so I said, I'm going to get out of this dark moment. And I did. And slowly but surely, I found ways to, get help, therapists, reading an unhealthy amount of self-help books, which is good and bad.
That is actually unhealthy.
Yeah.
And it comes from, it takes one to know one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
And meditation was, I'll be honest, I know a lot of people kind of like say, oh, meditation, whatever, but it was helpful. I mean, just anything and everything that I could get my hands on was helpful. One of the things I say nowadays to people, if you're feeling stuck, get in conversation. Get in conversation, have a conversation with somebody. Let people know what's going on inside, because you can't just bottle it up, because it just comes to an explosion point. And that's not going to be healthy in any way. Either you're going to snap on somebody else, or you're going to do something that will be not something you can come back from. So yeah, I just, that was the first dark moment. But that didn't solve all my problems. All it did is it got me out of the dark. And now I was just clawing my way out until I had a moment inside of a boardroom of a biotech company I was working at. And I looked around the room and saw the leaders who I was working with. I just felt this connection, this feeling that they weren't in it for the right reasons. They were worried about their own self-preservation and worrying about their own image. They were arguing about who's right and who's wrong in the room. I just had this feeling like, I think I'm done with this whole scene. We work in an industry that saves lives, but I don't see anyone's lives getting better in this room by this conversation and the way people are showing up. So I decided to get up and walk out.
Like literally?
Yeah, literally.
Like in the moment?
In the moment. I mean, I wasn't the person talking in the moment. It's not like I just kind of stopped my speech and walked out. I just had this feeling like, I think I'm done. And so I got up and walked out and didn't come back. Now, I said to myself at that moment, I said, I'm leaving this room because I feel like I need to change this room. There's got to be a different way of leading, one that is inspiring and a little bit less, treating people like cogs in a wheel and like they're disposable. And that's the feeling that I had at that moment, is that there was that sense of like we lost touch with who we are. And and how we should be leading people. So there I am walking out, panicking at the same time because I had no idea how I was going to make that all come to life. But I'm so glad I did. That was 8 years ago.
Wow.
And it changed everything for me.
How far apart were these two flashpoints?
They were about 2 years, a year and a half. Yeah.
My goodness. Are they connected in some way?
Well, yeah. I mean, they're connected in the sense that, you don't necessarily come from the darkest moment into the most profound moment of clarity. Sometimes it takes a little bit of processing to get there.
Sure.
So I think that's also a little bit of, I want to give that guidance for people who are having a challenge in their lives to say, like, don't try to make all the changes all at once,
Sure.
So I think that's what I did is I basically slowly realized that things weren't working and I need to do something different. And then eventually found out I needed to make a big change because I was just at that point where I wasn't making enough changes in my life. And so that's where that walking out had me saying, okay, it's time for me to make a bold change in my life. So they are related. They just had to be kind of tranched, if you will.
Sure. I mean, from my vantage point and hearing the story, it takes a lot of bravery to get up. I mean, I could only imagine. I mean, I don't know if I could have done that. Like, stood up in a board meeting and exited. Like, an incredible amount of bravery. And this coming, a year and a half, maybe 2 years after one of your darkest moments in your life.
Yeah.
What kind of what recommendation would you give to others, to be able to find that type of bravery if they find themselves similarly situated where they wake up one day? Because sometimes it does happen this way. Sometimes, you've been squelching the feelings and the vibes and all that kind of stuff down, because you don't want to feel them.
Yeah.
And then one day they hit you and then like, oh, how do I respond to these feelings? What would you recommend?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, not every move has to be a move to leave the corporate world or to leave your job or things like that.
Sure.
So
Right.
I don't always have to say, I don't always recommend, well, it's time to leave your job and start a new career. Because
Actually, that makes me feel really good that you say that. Many, this is anecdotal, but many times I've heard lots of stories from folks that are providing advice to people in their personal lives, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be therapists or executive coaches, like whatever. There's a whole business of advice, and it's like, and it has a lot of good intentions.
yeah.
But a lot of it, what I've heard, and this is just anecdotal, is like a lot of it sometimes culminates in, oh, you need to leave your spouse.
Yeah. Oh,
You need to walk out of work. You have to, give up the company. You have to, like, almost this kind of radical thing that you have to do in order to, like, chart a new course. And what I love that you're saying is, like, that's not what it looks like for everybody.
No. In fact, every person is going to take a different tact because we all are all so unique. And so the first thing I always recommend is that people take an inventory. In my first book, I talk about this idea. You start this climb and you had a reason why you started the climb on, your corporate career or your career in general.
Right.
Reconnect to why. What got you started? And what are some of the things that you really enjoy about what you're doing? Just because things are hard doesn't mean that they're wrong, right? Growth is hard.
Right.
It's inherently
That's right.
hard.
Yeah.
So don't feel like because it's hard that it's wrong. What you should be worried about is when you feel this this element of every week you look at the calendar and you say, okay, well, I have nothing to look forward to next week. Nothing about next week has me excited, or even there's no element of joy that is that you've connected to in your work. If that starts to show up, then you've got burnout on the horizon, or at least some sort of malaise in your work. And I don't,
Sure.
and I think that's one thing you should start to look for is where are you feeling a sense of like, disconnection that needs to be reconnected, and what can I do about it?
How do you differentiate like wrong role or wrong place?
Yeah, I mean, that's where the inventory comes in. You're taking steps
Okay.
to say, okay, like what is it about the work that I enjoy? And is it because of the fact that this company is not allowing me to do those things, or that I'm feeling like I'm being suffocated, or they're just not seeing the value that I bring? How could I bring more of that value in this place? If this place is just not the place that is allowing me to do that, then maybe it is time to look for a different place, right? Or if I feel like the role I'm in has now put me in a place where it no longer gives me what I'm looking for. In other words, I've risen to let's use the classic example of the scientist, right? Because people often talk about the scientist who says, like, I love bench science, and now they're asking me to be a people leader, and I don't know if I ever wanted to be a people leader, and that's okay.
Right.
Sometimes people get thrust into these roles, kicking and screaming.
Right.
Well, if that's what you want, if you just want to be a bench scientist, then be a bench scientist, and you can elevate in different ways. And so the key thing is to take a step back and say, all right, well, what would be most alive in me right now? Is it to be more at the bench and to do more scientific, technical work? Then that's what I'm going to do.
Once folks take the inventory, how do they bridge that to finding their way back to a place of clarity and purpose?
Yes. It's a great question. So we're still on just my first book, which is great. So although the climbing the mountain is the analogy that we're pulling in, the metaphor we're working with.
Yeah.
The underlying thing here is about time travel. Okay. Because we're time traveling. The first thing we did is the inventory, which really has a lot to do with looking back. And now the second step is not about coming to the present, it's about going into the future. And that future is not about just saying, okay, well, I see myself doing all these things. It's about who are you wanting to be? What are the elements that you want to connect to about that person you are becoming? And that's not just in the title. If the title is, hey, I want to be a CEO, that's great, but it's not about the title. It's about the impact that you're trying to drive towards. If your thought is that I really want to be able to make the impact of saving the lives of children through, whatever it may be, maybe it's through food insecurity or, whatever that thing is that is important to you, start with that and start to kind of say, okay, what do I need to do to make that my goal, that goal that I have, that element of what it is that I want to make in the world? How do I work backwards from that? How do I embody that now? And so that's where the present comes into being, which is to say, what am I missing now in the current thing I'm doing that I could now bring into the present? The best way to think about this is to think about it like the marathon runner, right? The classic example of a marathon runner, someone saying, I'd really like to be a marathon runner. Well, what does the marathon runner embody? They embody discipline. They run. They eat well, and they do all the things that make a runner come to life. And if those are things that you have no interest in doing, and you try to do all those things, guess what? You're not going to do it.
Right.
So if you're chasing someone else's rabbit or chasing someone else's goal, that's never gonna become something that you're going to go after. So you need to make sure you're really attached to who do I want to become.
Do you still carry dreams that you haven't yet gone after?
Oh yeah.
Can you share some?
Of course. I would love to have I do glass blowing, and I would love to have a glass blowing piece that is actually on display in the Corning Museum of Glass. That's my goal.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
So that will be a big goal. And then the other thing that I would really love to do is to run a retreat in some place really magical, whether it be Thailand or Vietnam or someplace in Asia, for people who really want to dream big in their lives. I mean, those don't sound like they're that out there, but for me, it's just manifesting it and making it happen.
That's very cool. In fact, I've been seeing, your travel schedule. You've been dotting the globe recently.
Yes. I've been traveling a lot this year, and I have one more trip this year, and then I'm done.
Oh, you do? You have one more?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
I'm just heading nowhere crazy, just going to Dallas. So
Oh, okay.
on Sunday.
Okay. Yeah. I was tracking some of your travels, and I was just like, I wanted to be there.
Next time, I'll give you a call.
When life feels really chaotic and starts to get away from you, what grounds you? What do you return to? Do you have practices? What do you do? And
Yeah.
like you.
Yeah, I'm going to share two things because one is a little more grand and the other one is a little bit more micro. So the more grand thing that I do is I take a trip. I go someplace. I'll give you an example. So sometimes in the most challenging times of my career and in my journey to creating the business that I've created, I've actually stepped away and done things like climbed Kilimanjaro, which this was a few years ago, but it was crazy because the idea of leaving my work and not having cell phone reception or internet for I was in the mountain for 10 days, and so I had nothing for 10 days, and then I was traveling for almost a month. So you think about, okay, building momentum in your business, then all of a sudden you're going to step away for a month. It's scary. And many people would say that's absolutely crazy. But to me, those things are what I need sometimes, is a pattern interrupt that steps you out of your business for a moment with other people and allows you to get a little more perspective of, well, who do I want to be when I come back? And what do I need to support myself? And what's so interesting, and I'll just stop with this one thing, is that what's interesting is I often find that a lot more business comes to me even when I take the foot off the gas, because I think I was holding on too tightly to try and generate business.
For sure.
So I'll get called on the way to the airport. I'll get called on the way home from my trip. And I'm like, what the heck? Where is everyone? I was trying to make this happen.
Yeah. I have a whole theory about liminal spaces. Actually, this podcast is a little bit about liminal spaces, to me anyway. I think there's so much that happens in the in-between.
Yeah.
So like you just mentioned, like a pattern interrupt. Like if you're like holding on to something so and you want something to come to pass, there's times where the moment that you just, like exercise that ability to let go and step away, that real things begin to happen.
Yeah.
And I can't explain why or how. But I've experienced that myself.
Yeah.
I want to go back to glass blowing.
Yes.
How did you get into that? What does that expression do for you? And what do these pieces look like?
Yeah, I can share a piece or two with you.
Okay.
But I'll just say, one of the things that I got into it because I've constantly been challenging myself to just have new experiences. I thrive on novel experiences. And so it started with just my wife saying, hey, like I got you, instead of buying you some more junk, which oftentimes, that was the case. You get more stuff. And I don't need more stuff. I need more experiences, and those things fulfill me. I tried things like going to going to a blacksmith shop and trying that, pottery, things like that. Pottery was super messy. Blacksmithing was really hard.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like you're so sore after a day of doing that. But glassblowing just hit me differently for many reasons, because there's a lot of uncertainty when you're working with glass, and a lot of fragility. You're working with it, you don't know how it's going to turn out until it's done. And so there's a lot of like playing around with the pieces. So that to me is a fun thing to play with, because there's, let's see what happens when you play with this. So yeah, that's what got me into it. And I still love new experiences. So I'm always saying like, what's the next glass blowing for me? One of the things I got into about 2.5 years ago was writing poetry, which is something that I hadn't done before, but I just had this feeling I needed to express myself in a different way. I was going through a lot of emotional journeys, and poetry became a great vehicle for expressing what I was going through, much better than I could in just my normal writing. So,
Oh, wow, that's fantastic.
so
Throw out a few other experiences that either you or perhaps some of your clients have embarked on.
well, I'll share one more of my own experiences. I flew a plane over the vineyard, Martha's Vineyard, which is,
Okay.
since I live in Boston, the vineyard is like our go-to place for
Sure.
trips. But my wife got me a flight over the vineyard, and with a pilot, but he let me fly the plane from one end to the island to the other. And it was just a magical experience because one of the things, I mean, first of all, I don't have a license, but what he allowed me to do is just take the wheel and see what it was like to be in control of the flight of the plane.
Wow.
It's one of those planes with an open top, like the
Oh,
old
seriously? Dang.
really cool, like a biplane.
Oh, very cool.
So yeah, that was an experience, and I would do that over and over again. It was a lot of fun. But I've had people come to me and say like, "Oh, I want to try. I've always wanted to surf," and like, I'm like, "Well, that's my challenge for you. Like, if that's something that's on your, in your heart and in your mind that you want to try, like, don't delay. Life is fragile. I mean, we've all seen, things pass. People in our families and our lives. They hold on and wait. Well, don't wait. Go out and try those things. If you have the capacity, if you're not confined. Actually, I shouldn't even say if you're confined. A friend of mine who's in a wheelchair just climbed Kilimanjaro, and I'm like, that his name is Jeff Harmon, and it's just a wonderful thing to see him do that. That anything is possible.
I love that. As you were speaking, I was thinking of, is there something that I've always wanted to do experientially that I have not yet done? And it's so funny. You mentioned, some of these, I don't want to call them trades, but some of these crafts, I always felt like in another life, I was a printmaker. Like I was actually like lining up, letters on a letterpress on a printing machine, like, and actually like making things like with a printing press, like that I would geek out over having an experience like that. So thank you. I have a new item on my list for experiences.
Love it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to just share something with you that's super quick. There is an organization, I think it's called VAWA, VAWAA. And basically what it is, it's an organization that matches people with opportunities to have experiential craft experiences everywhere in the world.
Whoa.
It's really neat. So you go travel someplace and you might like sit with a basket weaver or somebody to like learn how to do tile mosaics or things like that. And so it's literally like spending time with an expert craft, a person who's like really good at crafts. It could be cooking. Amazing. You never know. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. Okay, let's pivot. Your new book.
Yes.
Let's talk all about it.
Well, I think we just really did a wonderful segue into the new book because.
Okay, good.
So the new book is called Illuminating Hidden Brilliance. And just to give you a little bit of a lead up to this book is that even when I got into the world of facilitation, coaching, and the work that I was doing, that I hit a point where I was like, well, I like what I'm doing, but I feel like something's missing. And what was missing was I was not bringing the artists into the room. I wasn't bringing my artistry in the work that I was doing or, that I enjoyed outside of my, coaching and facilitation work. I wasn't bringing that element. And so I felt like good, but not great.
Yeah.
And so what I did is decided to change that. I decided to start bringing more of these elements into the work I was doing with people in a one-on-one and also in groups. And in the conversations I was having with people, I was starting to see that other people had sidelined parts of themselves and said, okay, well, hey, there's no place in my work for being a surfer or a dancer or an artist or even just like even parts of themselves about who they were before they got into the work. And I said, well, what happens if we start to invite some of those pieces of us into the room and integrate them into who we are? Because we aren't, as the old saying says, is we contain multitudes, but those multitudes need to have a place in how we show up day in and day out. And when we do, we become what I call multidimensional beings. And that's exactly how we can become more fulfilled in the work we do. So the best example of my book embodies, it's about integrating your sideline parts, like bringing the dancer back in the room while you're doing things like leading as an executive and using the neural pathways that you've learned in whatever it is that you do outside of work or have done in the past and bringing that into your body of work.
How might someone, you use this example of like dance, how might someone bring that into a leadership world?
Yeah. Well, it's almost like Freud, I'm thinking about Freud used to use archetypes, right? Archetypes are this way of thinking, how do you embody a certain archetype? Well, if you are a sage, then you have this element of, okay, the person who has wisdom to share, and you show up calm and kind of embodying that element. Well, it's really the same thing for these archetypes, if you will, because what happens is you think of the dancer, it's like, what does the dancer do that's different than most? Well, they know how to use their body intentionally. They move with grace. They have this sense of knowing what the room might need, how to choreograph their themselves. And so there's those embodied elements that we've learned in whatever we do, even if it's doing music, jazz, just as an example. Then those embodied elements can be translated into a new world if you're willing to explore and practice them. And so the key word here is practice. It's not like you're going to come straight out of the gates and say, oh, This is easy, I'll just do this and do that. It's about learning how to translate the language of what you already know into a new element, a new world.
I feel like you just issued me a challenge.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, I feel like you just issued me a challenge. I'm thinking about one of those things for me that I think about. Well, this podcast is one of those things, right? So this is a passion project of mine, and it came from like me. I had this voice inside that felt like needed to come out, and and these are the conversations that I love having. But I also think a lot about. I love sitting in the seat of curator. From a young child, I loved beautiful things. And not because of the things, but because of the beauty that was found. It wasn't about like, oh, I want fill in the blank. Now, there was a phase in my life where, yes, I went through I want XYZ, and yep, I worked hard, I got it. And I was in pursuit of things, so I certainly had that phase. Yeah. But from a like who I am standpoint, I really appreciate beauty wherever it is to be found, whether it's in commercial things, whether it's art, whether it's personalities and people and attributes and traits, or things that people can make, tactile things. Like me, I am a lover of paper. Whether, cotton paper, Japanese washi paper, how things can be made out of paper, and then I like to put those things together and be a convener of community, a curator of people, and then all of the elements that make those things come to life. What does the invitation look like? Was the paper struck with a machine? Like, was ink
Yeah.
pressed into something physical? All of those details are things I care a lot about.
Yeah.
And yet, in my practice at work, I try to bring some of that in, but I love this challenge. I'm going to bring more of that intentionally.
Yes.
And let people see that side of me more. And so I really, really appreciate that. That's because there are times at work that I don't know why, maybe it's cultural, societal, that we have been taught you operate in this container and it has rails on it, and you're not supposed to go outside of these rails.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is embrace it,
100%.
bring it in.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different schools that say like, oh, well, we shouldn't bring all of ourselves into the work. And I get that. It was like a lot of, challenges around, should you be authentic at work or not? This is not about being all of yourself. It's about being your best self. And
Sure.
I think this is where the curation, to use your word, curation is important. But if you leave a lot of yourself out of the picture, then what happens is you're miserable, because then you're just giving a fragment of who you are. That's not healthy. That's not healthy.
Oh gosh, I also love how you teased that apart just now. We are taught, or I've been taught, through all the channels that we get our information these days, which sadly is not perfect. It's not just not perfect. It's not.
Yes,
It's not.
let's be honest. Yeah, we know it's not perfect.
Where we're taught that things are more binary than they actually are. Yeah. Right? Like, binary thinking is a fallacy and a trap. Right? And yet, in order to get our attention, our devices, like, binary thinking, like, gets your attention because, like, it causes some dissonance inside of you in some way.
You have to choose.
Right? That you have to choose, right? Yeah. When the reality of the matter, if you put your device down, step away, right, and you just use your own mind and body to listen and feel through something, you're going to get all different shades of gray, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's another really big takeaway, especially when it comes to the workplace, because you'll hear memes that are like, yeah, don't bring all of yourself to work, because careful about that.
Yeah.
But then don't leave all of yourself at home either, because like you're just a hollow shell of yourself.
Exactly.
But it's the intentionality, what you choose to bring into that mix, that can actually have an outsized impact in your work, how you move through the world. And like, I know we have to wear masks in different situations.
Yeah.
But we can still wear masks with authenticity. In fact, wearing a mask sometimes is playful, and I love being playful, right? So, oh gosh, I love that.
That's great. And I just wanted to point something out. Like, what you're tapping into here is that's why it's even better when you can do this type of work with others, because you start to kind of create a safe space for the exploration, but also find ways to say, okay, like, getting to know who you are more fully allows me to say, wow, I didn't know that you had that element of that dimension that you haven't been sharing. And knowing that helps me to see you more fully and allows me to know how else you can contribute to the overall picture. Yeah. So,
yeah. Okay, wrapping up.
Yes.
Today, what feels the most meaningful about the work that you do?
Wow, that's a big question. I mean, for me, it's about seeing people live their most fullest lives they can. It makes me think of, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but I'll be quick. I don't want people to leave this world without putting all of what they have out in the paper, everything out in the field. I often think back to this friend of mine, a guy who I know really well, Todd Henry, has this book called Die Empty. And he taps into this concept of like the most valuable piece of property out in the world is in the cemetery, because that's where people's dreams, the biggest ideas they have, go to die. And what happens if we were to able to bring those ideas to the surface before we pass on? We need to get people to be more alive, more expressive before those dreams die.
Wow.
That's what I want. I want people to express what's really inside of them and bring it to light, to express their brilliance. So not just they benefit, but everyone else does too. So that's a little bit of a selfishness on my part.
What's next for you personally, professionally? Where can people find the things that we've talked about? We've talked about 2 books.
Yeah.
You're an executive coach. Like, where can they find you in your practice? All that good stuff.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to share my new website, which is just fresh off the presses. Still working on some kinks, so you just have to bear with me.
Okay.
It's TonyMSpeaks.com.
Okay.
You can find me there. My old website is iPurposePartners.com. So that's my company, but also I've been transitioning to a new website. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. I'm always sharing, tidbits. I'm trying to be of service wherever I can. My books are available everywhere books are sold, but predominantly at Amazon. It's probably the go-to place. My new book is not available until March. So stay tuned for that, but there'll be some pre-sales coming out. So
awesome. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this conversation, Tony.
Likewise, keep on doing what you're doing. This is wonderful, and looking forward to staying in touch.
I'm really grateful you spent this time with us. If something from this conversation resonated, I'd love for you to share it, subscribe, or leave a review. It's how these conversations continue to reach the people who need them. You'll find links to Tony and his work in the show notes. Thanks for listening to Coded in Gold. Take good care.